working at this level really gives you a chance to meet with people, not as an authority figure to some people below, not as like an educator to a student, but allows you to reach somebody on a peer-to-peer level. We're at events where drug use takes place, where really a lot of uninformed drug use takes place, where young people are taking drugs from people that they don't know, unpure drugs, and we're seeing issues, overdose issues arise from it. That's how I got involved in Amplify as a live music thing. Knowing people who would go to shows, get dangerously spun, and then not have anybody to take care of them. And that's kind of what we're looking to do, and that's what I'll talk about.
I'm Stephanie Jones. I work at the Drug Policy Alliance in the New York office, so Amanda on the previous panel is my colleague. I don't actually practice harm reduction, but nightlife has long been an interest of mine, all the way back to college, which was more years ago than I like to admit for me. I started out as somebody who just went out to clubs and parties, and that's how I came across, people my age at that time using drugs. And I found out about the Drug Policy Alliance, and I started volunteering, and eventually they hired me. I've been with them for 8 years now. I plan a conference called the Reform Conference. Have people in here been to the Reform? Yeah. All right, okay, good. Some people know my work. I've done 4 of those. So I've kind of learned a little bit about event management from almost like a promoter side of things. I've never thrown live music or dance parties or whatever, but I've definitely done that element, and I would venture to share that probably there are some people at the Reform Conference using drugs also. So I kind of have an understanding of it as a participant in nightlife, as well as being kind of the regulator person who needs to think about following rules and keeping people safe and that sort of thing. So I'm going to stop there for a second and let Jack take back over, but I'm going to speak a little bit about the policy side of things and a new project that we're initiating at Drug Policy Alliance that has to do with nightlife and festivals.
Yeah, sure. So if, Jack, I guess specifically to you, if you could tell us a little bit about what harm reduction in the live music community looks like, and also particularly a little bit about why it's important to promote harm reduction in the live music community. Great.
Cool. So I'm going to show you 2 informational things. One of these, Brooke Napier, Brian Gilbert, now Brooke and Brian Gilbert since they lovely got married. This is a presentation that they gave this summer in San Francisco at Club Health, which was a big conference focusing on harm reduction and nightlife, live music, nightclubs, things like that. So this is just to give you an idea of what do we do at Amplify? What does it look like? Our mission, what we want to do, create a bridge between the worlds of drug policy reform and live music. We want to meet people as peers, because that's what people respond best to. They respond to people that they know, that are within their community, their subculture. Those are the people that they listen to, that they respect, and that they really learn from. So we've been at Summer Camp Music Festival, Rewire Music Festival, a lot of smaller ones. We can take a look at later. We've got a festival safety guide, which is something that we just finished last summer and put out, talking a lot about, hey, what does this drug do? What's a safe dosage look like? What can I expect from this? Rather than saying just don't do them. This drug use is happening rampantly at these festivals. Say, hey, here's how to stay safe. When you're driving in, if you get pulled over, here's how to stay safe. That's what we're trying to do. So this is quite literally what it looks like. For those who can't see, this is a setup that we have. What we've got here is we've got our Amplify table, drug policy information, ways to get involved, know your rights, things like that. And what we have over here is mostly from DanceSafe. This is factual drug information, earplugs, water, the side of it that says, hey, you're going to be using drugs, this is what they do, we'd like to help you not hurt yourself, you're gonna do it anyway. What we've got here is our cool down area. We've got water, shade, and most importantly, a place to lay down. And what we're doing here is instead of bringing somebody to an emergency first responder if they're only having a difficult psychedelic experience, they don't necessarily need to go to an EMT, certainly don't need to go right away to a police officer. What this allows is to say, hey, sit down, cool off, let's talk out what's going on here, see what's going on in your head, how we can help, and just diffuse the situation. Lessons learned. Benefits emerging both worlds. Like I keep saying, we're not coming in from a top-down perspective. We're reaching people as their friends, as their peers, as part of their community to help, not necessarily to even change or lecture, just to help and be there. Some more pictures, what we do. Moving forward, we'd like to be, rather than going event specific, setting up partnerships with the venue. Before it shut down in Philadelphia, there was a great place called the Blockley that we had a really good relationship with, where we didn't even necessarily need to be partnered with an artist to set up there. They knew and they agreed with what we were doing. But on the same token, we can pretty much never set up at the Theater of Living Arts, the TLA down in Philly, because they're just really opposed to any sort of drug acknowledgement. And that's something that we need to be working past. Now I just want to show you a little bit more of what we do. This is our volunteer training workshop PowerPoint. And anybody who's interested in being involved as a regional organizer, they go through this training, and I know Jen, I don't know if she's not here anymore, Jen has been trained as a regional organizer. Do we have anybody else that's been trained by Amplify here? We've got some training sessions coming up, so if you want to talk to me later, we can talk about that. People that are involved in all this. As you can see, Jen, so to start off, you volunteer for a slot. We release our tour dates for our partnered artists, and we look at who's around. So somebody's playing a show at a place in Chicago. So we look and say, hey, where do we have chapters? All right, we got Northwestern here and University of Chicago, Illinois here. And we reach out to them and say, hey, are you interested? These are the opportunities available to you. Can you make it? They do street teaming, handing out promo, and doing online stuff. We can skip past that. This is promotion. So what do we do at shows? Promoting local, state, and national. What's great about being localized at each show and not sending the same team to every show is that I know it's important here in the Philadelphia region, the Westchester region, better than somebody that would be coming up from DC would. Likewise, the issues being faced in Chicago, I know nothing about, but a Chicago chapter is able to address those. Harm reduction supplies we distribute, earplugs, water, condoms, because it does go beyond just the damages of drug use. There's also, people get fucked up and have unprotected sex. That is something that happens, especially at festivals. And not everybody thinks, oh, I'm gonna bring my condoms to my music festival. We provide them, say, hey, just be safe. What we don't do at shows, engage in any illegal activities at the table. At Rootwire Music Festival this year, there were a bunch of cops that came in because one of the vendors was selling hash oil out of his vending booth. That is not what we do. Even drinking, it's really, I mean, it's legal if you're over 21, you know, it's allowed, but we don't want that at the table. That's not what we're trying to put forward publicly. Table setups, drug information, drug policy information. Now, everybody's probably pretty aware of what do you do when you table on campus. Engage everyone, just talk to them. These are the people that you're trying to reach when you're at a live show. You know, when you're tabling on your campus, it's a more closed audience. People might have heard of you just from being around. But when you're at a show, you're reaching a much broader audience, and it's also a niche that you are specifically trying to reach. Students cover a wide breadth of things, but you're trying to help people in the nightlife community. Be short and to the point, not always great at that myself, and focus on one main issue. Maybe you've got, you know, here in Philadelphia, Rachel's SSD chapter has been working great on this, the Philly decriminalization bill. So gathering signatures and support in Philadelphia for that. Distributing things. So yeah, that's basically what it looks like when we're working here. I won't go into all the rest of that. Yeah, but that's basically what it looks like when you're working at a show through Amplify, through Dance Safe. We'll talk about some more stuff as it goes.
I'm going to stand up so you can see me all the way at the back. So to tell a little bit more about my history and why I'm talking to you on this panel. So I was originally, you know, nightlife participant. I was very into the scene and the music. Personally, I come from like an electronic music background. Do we have like EDM fans here? All right, okay. And do we have like live music, jam band people? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's good. Like Amplify, I think, you know, is a little bit more in the live music, jam band kind of thing. Dance Safe is a lot more in the EDM and dance music scene. So that's my background. I worked at DPA. I worked on the Reform Conference, which is a drug policy thing. But I've been at DPA kind of for a long time now, like 8 years. And this area that I cared so much about, like, is really, I don't know if you guys have felt this way also, but it was really like not part of the conversation. So we do a lot of incredible work, you know, on medical marijuana and legalizing marijuana. We do incredible like preventing overdose work that my colleague talked about in the panel before, but that's mostly about opiate overdoses. So, you know, it was frustrating for me to be at DPA for so long and so close to where we're changing and talking about so many things, and there was really no space yet to talk about harm reduction as it related to nightlife and festivals, and there was certainly not a lot of space to talk about drug policy reform as it relates to nightlife and festivals. So it's kind of something that I've been working on for a while, and actually the conference that Jack mentioned, Club Health, is one that I helped put together with the national level of Dance Safe. It's a conference that happens in Europe actually quite frequently, and I was privileged enough to attend, and I was like, this is fantastic, we have to do this in the US. And it was all about bringing people who knew the best practices from over there to start to meet people here in the US who are thinking about this stuff and caring about this stuff. It was an incredible beginning of an opportunity, and I think we want to, you know, build on that. So I guess I'm speaking to people in the room who, you know, if you have an interest in nightlife and festivals, maybe when you go out, you just kind of like to be out. I'm one of those people. But God bless the people who do the harm reduction and set up tables. But there are other ways to be involved. And so that's what I'm trying to initiate at Drug Policy Alliance. So I'm working with the national level of Dance Safe, with a couple of other organizations, and we're trying to find ways to start bringing drug use in the nightlife and festival context, you know, to the table, to start having this conversation. And the way that it has been kind of, we're figuring it out still, it's a new thing, so hearing from you guys is really helpful. But there's 3 key points, I think, that especially from Drug Policy Alliance perspective, we want to talk about. The first thing is well, actually, let me start with the second thing. The second thing is actually getting more harm reduction efforts like Dance Safe and Amplify out there in the world. So as you know, you've been following the news, there's been some overdoses and deaths at festivals, so people are starting to change their attitudes towards that. Back when I was going to parties and festivals, if somebody died, that was it, party was over, and it was like, we're not doing that one anymore. Now these like parties are so big and everybody's into it, they want to find ways to keep them going, I think. And they also realize that shutting the party down is not really an answer. And so we're much more open now to hearing about things like Dance Safe and Amplify and making sure that those happen in the parties at your area. So that's the second thing really, is like to push for a greater acceptance of harm reduction. And with that goes the knowledge that you need to have to provide accurate harm reduction information. There is a lot of misinformation out there about what is Molly. Is it the same thing as MDMA? Like, what is bath salts? Like there's a lot of information. That's why I brought these fact sheets, which are at the sign-in table, just because that's part of what we want to do. We want to start getting information out there. And a lot of times, actually, especially as it relates to synthetic drugs, probably you guys know more than your school administrators and than local cops. And so we want to provide resources to you to help educate these people, because at this point, you probably are serving as educators on these substances. So that's the second point. I'm going to jump back to the first point now. So one of the frustrations, again, of like not being able to talk about this is when people go out and use drugs in a nightlife and festival context, they are using them probably for fun. I don't know about you guys, but when I go out and I use drugs in those contexts, I generally have fun, and that's my goal. And so it's really hard to talk about harm reduction if we can't first acknowledge that people's motivation is that they want to enjoy themselves. They want to have a positive experience. A lot of the best harm reduction, it comes from the place of acknowledging that this person wants to have something good happen to them, not something bad. Like they're using this substance because they want to be excited, they want to talk to their friends, whatever the motivation is. They probably don't want to overdose, throw up, end up in porta potties, which are disgusting, none of that stuff. And so like if we are able to kind of change the conversation to talk about the full range of drug use, that's really going to help us get our work done in this area. So, some people come from a place of pain. There's definitely problematic behavior, there's addictive behavior, but there's another side of things where people are they're coming from a positive place, it's adding something to their lives. Doesn't mean they're not engaged in, behaviors that can be dangerous, things like that. But we just need to find ways to start talking about that full range of the experience, that there's a whole scope of motivations and reasons people use drugs, including sometimes for positivity. And so that's going to help us get to the second point, which is about advocating for greater harm reduction and advocating for better knowledge, just like actual factual scientific information that will help people make informed decisions. So those are the first 2 points. The third point is it's a little bit harder to get to, and it's not something that we're talking about yet, but one of the other things that you think about generally when you're going out to a party or a festival is you're worried about if you're going to get arrested or not. You're worried about if you're going to bring something in past security. This is definitely something that you think about. And in some ways, we've become accustomed to just thinking that that's normal. And the third part of this is talking about how the criminal justice impact, shows itself in this arena. Nightlife is a very heavily policed activity, unless you're talking about underground parties, in which case the threat is if somebody's going to come to bust them. But generally, if you're going to a big festival or even a live music spot, you have to go through security. There's undercover cops there. I'm not sure if there's another area where you are going to be more heavily policed. And that's not something that we're really talking about yet. And part of what I am initiating at Drug Policy Alliance is just understanding the impact of that. figuring out how many people do get arrested at festivals, how many people are, you know, just having those kind of experiences. How many cops are they even deploying to these things? Like some of the bigger festivals, it's like a significant amount of force. And like ultimately, one of the main policies that Drug Policy Alliance is pushing for is decriminalization. And so for the people in the room who are confused, because it's kind of a jargony sort of word, the quick way that I explain it is that decriminalization means that nobody should be in jail for possessing drugs. Doesn't answer the question about where you buy them from or the market. That's kind of what legalization or a regulated market does. But decriminalization means nobody should go to jail for simple drug possession. So, you have a question?
Well, not a question, but just a comment. If something is decriminalized, it is still illegal. You can still be sent to jail for it. When you decriminalize something, it means you take it out of the category of misdemeanor or felony and move it to violation, which means that there's a maximum sentence of less than a year in most states. Fines are limited, but it's still against the law. And I think it's maybe time to start using the L word, but we could talk about that later.
We should talk about that. I mean, so there's a lot of different, I hear the snaps. As I'm sure you've seen in your policy efforts, sometimes there's reasons to take incremental steps and kind of bring people along that are not quite where maybe the rest of us in the room might be. And we have to also be very specific about what our definitions are. As you can see, you know, what does decriminalization even mean? These kind of things. I'm just bringing it up in the context of nightlife and festivals, just so that we start thinking about that, so that that starts to be part of a conversation. Like, because that is somebody's experience at a festival. Quite honestly, you're probably more likely to be arrested than you are to overdose and die. So, just that's kind of the three elements of the project that I'm initiating at Drug Policy Alliance. I've spoken a long time now, and I'm gonna turn it back over and hopefully hear some questions from you guys.
So quickly, you touched on a lot of this, but if Jack, if you could speak to what students can do to get involved in harm reduction efforts, particularly on campus, because we're going to leave this conference and that's where most of us are headed back to. So if you want to speak on it, and Stephanie, you want to add after that, and then we'll get some questions in 15 minutes towards the end.
Yeah, great. So what I'm going to start with is even something that you can do freely of Amplify, not involving Amplify or DanceSafe. Something that we did last semester with varying degrees of success is we started, it's a drug and alcohol free nightlife event. We called it Students for Sensible Dance Parties. Where we kicked around the name like Safe Rave. When people hear safe, they're like, oh, that's fucking lame, I don't want to do that. Yeah, SSDP, Students for Sensible Dance Parties. We ended up with a partnership up in town, a place called Landmark. It's a multi-story bar, and they gave us, the school covered the cost for renting it out. They did it very cheap at cost. And we got to put on our own music, our own DJs, give people, you know, sodas and stuff, but to provide a safe environment where, hey, if you're into the nightlife scene, here's an option that's not necessarily flooded with drugs or pressure to use drugs. I'm not saying that all nightlife is, but there is a certain contingency of people that are pushed out because they don't want to be around that. And I thought that that was a very successful, well, not very successful in the last one, but when you can promote it right and you can get people to come out, it's really a great way to reach people that aren't necessarily being reached. Being involved with Amplify, sadly to say, the best thing that you can do to get involved is or not live in the middle of nowhere. Nobody comes out there. But you don't have to be working with our national artists. There's regional artists. You don't need national SSDP's permission to set up your own Amplify table in your own community. If you've got shows on campus, off campus, open mics, things like that, anywhere that there's music taking place, you can set up, because these are people that you should probably reach, that you should probably be talking to. link up with your local music venues. Maybe there's a bar by your campus that has DJ nights or things like that. Talk to them, say, hey, here's what we do. We're not pro-drug, we're not anti-drug. We just want to help your patrons stay safe, and we want to help you as a business owner not be held liable if something like this happens. And that's a big issue. That's why we can't really work at the TLA here in Philly, is they feel that if they address drugs in any context, even in our context, that they're there for endorsing it, and it opens it up to lawsuits. Legally, I don't. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that should matter. I feel like you should be putting the safety of the people that come into your establishment first. So yeah, getting involved with just your local music scene. You would know it better than anybody else, than any national staff would. Get involved, talk to local bands, DJs, promoters, venues. Say, hey, we're trying to keep people safe, we're trying to inform people. Can we set up? If you guys need resources, information, tabling materials, come talk to me afterwards. We can get you in touch with our national staff and get you in touch with the Dance Safe national staff, who can send you out a lot of good information. Yeah.
You just asked a question.
Great, yeah, so, and quickly before we open up to the questions, Stephanie, if you could elaborate a little on any policies that we can work to change that can help us make harm reduction services easier to provide?
So, just a little bit off of what Jack says, there are some risks to a promoter, or especially to a venue owner, to have like an acknowledgement of drugs in their space. And so a lot of the work that I want to do and that I want to, encourage others to do is some of that. It's like policy advocacy, where you're convincing, you get the cops in the room, you get the city officials in the room. Like, you have to basically make a local exception to what would be a standard policy. So that's one thing. Another thing that we're looking at is, I'm sure many of you have heard of Dance Safe testing kits, or there's other ones from Bunk Police. Those are mostly illegal, actually, in many states. So, yeah.
They count as drug paraphernalia.
They count as drug paraphernalia. A testing kit, which is meant to save your life. It's kind of along the same lines as why for many years we had to fight to get access to syringes and have syringe exchanges happen, because that's also considered drug paraphernalia, even though that reduces the spread of HIV/AIDS. Okay, so we've had that long conversation, and it's the same kind of conversation that we want to have around those testing kits, because essentially people are using it for safety reasons and to save their lives. So we have to first understand how these laws are written, try and identify some spots where they may be either egregiously applied, or they might be easier to remove penalties for, but that's kind of a low-hanging fruit target when we talk about policy change. I mean, further down the line, we'll have a conversation about decriminalization or legalization, but that's further down the line.
And I want to address something about the testing kits. That is something that we did this summer. We didn't put the SSDP or Amplify name on it, but it's something that we, as individual activists that were already there, chose to do. We were at Purple Hatter's Ball, the End of the World as We Know It Festival, Rewire, doing testing where we could, not at the booth, maybe take somebody back to like a tent or something, talk about it there. But it makes the difference. Dance Safe, in their last summer, they did a lot of field tests. So take Molly. 55% of everything that we tested that was Molly did not have MDMA in it.
Wow.
No MDMA. The majority of what was being sold as Molly didn't have that. It's methadone. A lot of what this is methadone. And then even the MDMA that you do get is cut down. So maybe, I have to say, don't do it at the table. Don't put the SSDP name on it. And I can't advocate anything illegal, but this does save lives. At Purple's Hatters Ball, we made somebody's day real shitty because he came with a big old bag of methadone and tried to sell it as Molly, and we said, hey, this is going around, don't buy it. You know what you're doing, be safe. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add on that one.
So at this time, we're going to open up to questions.
Oh, my question I was asking, do you know anywhere, where we can like, get them, or you can get them maybe like in a more whole, like bulk?
Yeah,
I know that they
DanSafe,
sell them at festivals and stuff.
dansafe.org, if you go to their store, they sell them individually and as a whole 4-panel kit. So what you get, there's five different bottles, 4 different tests. The MEC, the Marquis, the 2-part Simon, and there's one more, I don't remember what the name is. But they work differently. So you can use your MEC test, for example, and that'll tell you, hey, is this MDMA, MDA, MDE, is it in that category? It turns a certain color. If it's methadone, it'll turn yellow as opposed to like the purple and black of the first one. But you need your Simon reagent test to then narrow that down. So yeah, it was an MD something, but was it MDA, SAS as a lot of people know it as, or was it MDMA? And depending on the test, you can figure those out. But yeah, the DanSafe store, that's where we got them. If you email them and you're looking for bulk, I don't want to blow up their spot. They gave us a bulk deal on a few of them, so talk to them, see what you can work out.
Yeah, and just like a comment, I think that's like a really good idea, just as a festival goer, to try to prepare yourself with that stuff, because in my experience, like anybody who's trying to sell drugs, like if they are, they're really confident usually about their product, and so they'll be usually willing to give you a sample or whatever to test, or like so you can, inform other people about like what they have.
Yeah, and if they're not okay with it, stay far away.
Yeah, exactly, because they should know what they have.
No questions?
We have a few testing kits, and we use a word of mouth system to tell people about it. But we find a lot of people are pretty reluctant to come test their drugs because, hey, they bought it, they're going to take it anyway. Like most of the time, if they do test it, and most of the time it's not MDMA, they're just like, oh, I'll just take it anyway. So what do you guys have?
And I mean, that's a great thing to do, and sometimes, I mean, you've tested, you've done your part. It comes down to the individual as to whether they're going to take it or not. I've tested drugs for people and they've been like, oh, well, I guess I'm having a methadone night tonight. That's your choice. That's what you're gonna do. That's what you're gonna do. But yeah, I mean, you've done everything that you can at that point. You've showed them, you've informed them. All that you can do is arm somebody with the truth. It's up to them what they're gonna do with it.
And I would add to that actually that's why it's so important to learn about the adulterants, aka the cathinones, what might be in there. People use these by choice in other places, and so like there's one very popular one, methadone. I always get it, methadone. It's like it was very popular in the UK, and people were using it by choice. And like they learned what it was, what the effects were, and that sort of thing, and people preferred it sometimes over MDMA. So I think that another thing that you can do when people are just like, I'm going to take it anyway, is to be prepared with some knowledge about what some of the common adulterants are, methadone and ephedrone, other cathinones, that sort of thing, and just be like, okay, this one's a little bit more like on the amphetamine side, so like don't overdose, like be aware of like, your heart rate. There are still some harm reduction efforts that you can give, but that's just about being as educated as you possibly can, and if you don't know about it, it's just about trying to trigger that awareness in them, being like, okay, if you're determined to do this, like know that you're about to embark on something that is unknown, and that you need to have a buddy with you, and that you need to be like super aware of anything unusual signs and take it seriously. So that's your best bet, probably.
I feel like I was talking about like MDMA or like acid or would those or like LSD, like would those tests pick up on like possible like research chemicals?
Yeah, here I can show you everything that
Chemicals going around?
I can show you everything it'll test with.
It fucked a lot of people up, so like.
Yeah, a lot of the research chemicals or synthetics, like there's some that are more on the amphetamine side, there are some that are more on the like hallucinogenic side. Honestly, it's like letter and number soup, and it's really confusing and hard to know what it is, and there's still not a lot of sources. Like that's again why I brought the synthetics fact sheet. This is not very detailed by chemical. This is a book that I'm reading right now. It's called Drugs 2.0. It's by a UK author. It's really excellent book about like the history of how, you know, MDMA became popular, why, you know, synthetic drugs came on the scene. If people know about online drug markets like Silk Road starts to talk about this. I'm learning things from this book, and I highly encourage you guys to like order it and read it online. But we're just, you know, all the information is still coming, and that's part of the challenge. Yeah.
So yeah, here's what this would look like. This is your color chart for what that testing kit would entail. These are the different testings, and as you can see, they work for different drugs. What you would use primarily to determine, hey, is this MDMA or like methylone? That's, you know, that's your common dichotomy there. You'd use your marquee test, and you can tell anything in the MD series, purple to black. That's what you want to see. Methylone, very different. Yellow, never what you want to see. But as you can tell, see, if you were trying to use this test, you couldn't use it for, if you want to find out if something's ketamine or methoxetamine or anything like that. You would then have to go over here to your mandolin test in order to figure out what you're working with. You were talking about like research chemicals and things like that. So you can see down here, two of these tests, the Marquee and the MEC, will work testing for LSD, but not all of them will. Now, like what sort of research chemicals are we talking about? The whole